Life can feel overwhelming when we look at the entire staircase in front of us. The bills we need to pay, the goals we want to reach, the dreams we're chasing that seem so far away. And that's where most people get stuck staring at the whole picture, paralyzed by how high the climb looks. But champions don't think that way. Winners don't try to jump 10 steps at once. They lock in on the one step in front of them, the action they can take today, the move they can control right now. Because greatness isn't built in a single leap. It's built one step, one sacrifice, one disciplined decision at a time. When people think about success, they often imagine it as this enormous structure towering above them. A mountain, a skyscraper, a staircase spiraling upward into the clouds. And it's easy to be overwhelmed by that image because in that moment, you're comparing where you are now with where you wish to be. You're standing at the bottom, staring at the entire climb, and suddenly the distance feels impossible to bridge. The weight of it paralyzes you. And so instead of moving, instead of taking the one step you're capable of taking, you stand frozen in fear. But here's the truth: nobody climbs the entire staircase in a single bound. Nobody wakes up and writes a masterpiece in one sitting. Nobody becomes a champion overnight. Every achievement, every meaningful transformation begins with clarity in the present moment. An ability to fix your eyes not on the peak of the mountain, but on the single step right before your feet. When you focus too much on the totality of the climb, you're feeding your anxiety. That anxiety isn't just emotional, it's deeply practical. Your brain is limited in how much it can process at once. When you overload it with the whole staircase, it generates a flood of doubt. What if I fail? What if it takes too long? What if I'm not strong enough? Those questions don't come from the step in front of you. They come from imagining all the steps at once. The present doesn't paralyze you, the imagined future does. Think about how people learn to play an instrument. They don't start with Beethoven symphonies. They start with scales, one note at a time, one progression at a time. And at first it feels small, almost insignificant. But if you stay present in that moment, if you keep practicing the little pieces, something extraordinary happens one day. The scales blend into songs, the songs into compositions. And before long, you're playing with fluency. That is the staircase being built, brick by brick, note by note. And it never would have happened if the musician obsessed over the final concert before they'd learned a single scale. Now, there's something deeply psychological at play here. Human beings have a tendency to catastrophize, to expand the difficulty of the task far beyond its actual size. A step is manageable. You can take a step, but when your mind converts that step into the whole staircase, it becomes unbearable. The trick is to break life down into digestible pieces. You don't need to know every detail of how the story ends. You just need to be faithful with what is in front of you. This is not just practical advice, it's a moral orientation. Because when you focus on the present, you're making a statement: I will take responsibility for what I can do today. That responsibility compounds. You clean your room, you show up on time, you finish the assignment, you take care of your health. These things seem small, but they are not small. They are steps. And every step taken responsibly leads you upward. Consider this: the step in front of you is always within your power. You might not be able to control the entire outcome, the promotion, the championship, the dream, but you can control whether or not you give your best effort in this moment. And paradoxically, the more you focus on the step, the closer you get to the staircase. The more you immerse yourself in today, the faster tomorrow unfolds. It's tempting to think about the whole journey because it feels like you're preparing. But most of the time, what you're doing is rehearsing your fear. You're rehearsing failure before it even happens. And that rehearsal costs you the energy you could have invested in action. What if instead you rehearsed responsibility? What if instead of asking, how will I ever climb all of that, you asked, what can I do now that will move me one step closer? That shift in focus changes everything. It grounds you. It gives you a sense of power, because suddenly the impossible becomes possible. Suddenly the overwhelming staircase is nothing more than a series of manageable steps. And here's what I want you to take with you: clarity is found not in staring at the whole staircase, but in engaging the step in front of you. If you master the present moment, if you learn to discipline yourself to focus on what is immediately at hand, then the future will take care of itself. So when you feel paralyzed, when the staircase looks too tall, remind yourself of this: the only thing you have to do today is take the next step. One deliberate step forward is infinitely more powerful than a lifetime spent staring at the climb. We often imagine victory as a single dramatic moment: the standing ovation, the trophy lifted, the final signature on a contract. That's how the movies show it, and that's what social media loves to highlight. But in reality, victory is not a single moment. It is an accumulation. It is the sum of countless small wins that over time create the impression of a breakthrough. And if you don't learn to value those small wins, if you overlook them because they seem too ordinary, you will rob yourself of the very fuel that makes great victories possible. Let's take something as simple as fitness. People decide they want to get in shape, and immediately they imagine the perfect physique: toned muscles, strength, endurance. They see that as the victory. But if you talk to someone who actually reached that level, they'll tell you it wasn't the grand image that carried them. It was showing up to the gym on the days they didn't feel like it. It was adding one more rep, lifting 5 more pounds, eating one more healthy meal when the temptation to quit was right there. Those small wins weren't glamorous. Nobody applauded them. But they stacked day after day until they produced something extraordinary. Psychologically, there's something profound happening here. Human beings are built for progress. We need evidence that we're moving forward, and small wins provide that evidence. Each one is like a signal to the brain you're on the right path. And when the brain receives that signal, it reinforces the behavior. It tells you, yes, keep going. This is working. Over time, those reinforcements become momentum, and momentum is what makes the impossible feel possible. That's why ignoring small wins is so dangerous. If you only measure yourself by the final outcome, you're constantly failing until the very last moment. Imagine telling yourself, I'm not successful until I've made $1 million, or I'm not a real writer until I've published a bestseller. What does that mean for all the years you spend working toward those goals? It means you live in a state of failure, and people can't survive psychologically in a permanent state of failure. They give up, they collapse, or they numb themselves with distraction. Instead, you need to reframe your perception. The real victory isn't the $1 million or the bestseller or the championship trophy. The real victory is today's disciplined choice. It's writing one page, saving $50, studying for an extra hour, or resisting the temptation to waste the evening. Those are the victories that matter because they accumulate. $1 million is nothing more than millions of small financial decisions compounded. A book is nothing more than thousands of words strung together. A championship is nothing more than years of practice sessions, sprints, and drills. The big victory is always hidden inside the small ones. This perspective is liberating because it removes the illusion that success is some far off mountain. Success is immediate. Success is right here in the next action you choose to take. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, you've won. Every time you resist procrastination and act, you've won. And those wins, however small, begin to define your identity. You start to see yourself as a person who can follow through, who can endure, who can achieve. That identity becomes the foundation for bigger goals. Because once you've proven to yourself that you can win the small battles, the larger ones no longer intimidate you. Think of it this way, life is not a single war, it is a series of battles. You cannot win the war if you refuse to fight the battles. And each battle is won by small acts of courage, small choices of discipline, small steps of consistency. The person who ignores these battles while waiting for the war to end is already lost. But the one who wins them daily finds that, almost by accident, the war has already been decided in their favor. So what does that mean for you? It means you need to start paying attention to the little victories. Stop dismissing them as insignificant. Stop telling yourself they don't count until they add up to something impressive. They count right now. Because they are training you, shaping you, and stacking the odds in your favor. If you want to see the staircase clearly, look at your feet. Notice the step you just took. That's a win. If you can anchor yourself in those moments, you'll find that the great victories you dream about don't feel so impossible anymore. They will arrive naturally as the byproduct of stacking one small win on top of another. One of the greatest challenges in our age is not simply the difficulty of the task before us, but the endless stream of distractions that pull us away from them. If you stand at the bottom of a staircase and stare at the entire climb, the sheer scale of it will generate fear and hesitation. But there's another danger just as destructive. Instead of moving forward, you divert your attention to everything around you. The phone in your hand, the entertainment on your screen, the quick dopamine hit of social validation. These things might feel harmless in the moment, but collectively they erode your ability to focus. And when focus is gone, discipline collapses. Discipline is, in essence, the decision to commit to the step in front of you, regardless of how you feel. It is the refusal to negotiate with your weaker impulses. It is the voice inside that says, yes, this is hard, yes, this is uncomfortable, but this is what I must do. And if you don't cultivate that voice, distractions will speak louder than your goals. They will seduce you into surrendering your time, one fragment at a time, until months and years have slipped through your fingers. There's a reason so many people live with frustration. They set goals, they even take the first step, but they lack the discipline to continue when boredom or difficulty sets in. That's when distraction appears most attractive, right at the point where the work begins to demand something from you. And you rationalize that I'll check my phone for just a second. I'll watch one video. I'll rest for a bit before I continue. But what you're really doing is training your brain to abandon focus whenever the pressure rises. You're teaching yourself to avoid discomfort rather than to endure it. From a psychological standpoint, this is devastating. Because every time you choose distraction over discipline, you reinforce the belief that you cannot handle responsibility. You begin to internalize the idea that your comfort is more important than your commitment. And that belief, repeated across years, becomes a narrative about your identity. I am the kind of person who doesn't finish what I start. That's a story you don't want to tell yourself. But the opposite is also true. Every time you resist distraction, every time you say no to the easy escape and yes to the hard step in front of you, you build strength. You build proof that you are capable of discipline. And that proof compounds. Just like small wins accumulate into great victories, small acts of discipline accumulate into great character. It's important to recognize, too, that distraction is not neutral. People sometimes treat it as if it's simply wasted time, something trivial. But distraction is more than wasted time. It's stolen potential. Every moment given to distraction is a moment not invested in growth, not invested in mastery, not invested in the future you claim to want. The cost is not measured in hours lost, but in the person you might have become if those hours had been spent differently. That's why discipline matters so much. Discipline protects you from that theft. It anchors you to the present task, to the step in front of you, even when everything around you is trying to pull you away. And here's the paradox: the more you practice discipline, the freer you become. People think discipline is restrictive, that it's a kind of prison. But look at the alternative. If you can't control your impulses, then you're not free, you're enslaved to them. Discipline, on the other hand, creates freedom. Because when you master your focus, you gain control of your life. Think of someone who practices a craft, a musician, for example. To the outsider, it looks restrictive, hours of repetition, endless scale. Discipline practice. But the result of that discipline is freedom. Freedom to play with mastery, to express creativity without limitation, to commend the instrument rather than be controlled by its difficulty. That is what discipline offers: the freedom to climb the staircase with confidence, because you've trained yourself not to be pulled away by every distraction along the way. And so the choice is always before you. You can surrender to distraction, or you can discipline yourself to take the step that matters. One path leads to a lifetime of regret, the other to the realization of potential. One of the hardest parts of pursuing anything worthwhile is that you can't see the entire path laid out in front of you. You want certainty. You want to guarantee that if you take the next step, it will lead exactly where you hope to go. But life doesn't offer that kind of clarity. You don't get to see the whole staircase. All you get is the next step. And that's where faith becomes essential. Not blind faith, not naive optimism, but a deep trust in the process itself. When I say faith, I don't mean wishful thinking. I mean the disciplined belief that if you commit yourself fully to today's step, tomorrow will unfold as it should. It's the understanding that the process, the daily grind, the repetition, the discipline has a logic of its own, even if you can't see the full picture right now. And this is where so many people fail. They want the destination without trusting the path. They want to leap to the top without enduring the climb. And when they can't see the immediate payoff, they abandon the journey. But think about it. Almost every meaningful achievement in human history has been the product of faith in a process. A scientist doesn't know if years of experiments will lead to discovery, but they keep testing, refining, adjusting, because they trust that consistent effort will eventually produce breakthrough. An artist doesn't know if the canvas will turn into a masterpiece, but they trust the brush strokes, one after another, will form something greater than the sum of its parts. Athletes don't know if all the hours in the gym will culminate in victory, but they train relentlessly because the process itself builds the possibility of winning. Faith in the process requires humility. It forces you to admit you don't control everything, that you don't have the full map, but it also demands responsibility because it says, even though I can't see it all, I will still do what I can today. And that combination, humility and responsibility, is powerful. It keeps you grounded while still moving you forward. There's also a psychological element here worth considering. When you focus on results you can't control, anxiety grows. You start to worry, what if I fail? What if I waste my time? What if I never reach the goal? But when you redirect your attention to the process, anxiety diminishes. Why? Because the process is something you can control. You can control whether you show up, whether you work, whether you discipline yourself. Faith in the process is, in many ways, an antidote to anxiety. It shifts your focus from the outcome you fear to the effort you can deliver. Of course, this is not easy. Faith in the process often feels like walking in the dark. You don't know if the next step will lead upward or sideways, if the effort you're investing today will pay off next week, next year, or maybe even decades from now. And this is where many people give up too soon. They assume that because the staircase is hidden, it doesn't exist. They confuse not seeing the outcome with the outcome being impossible. But history, psychology, and lived experience all suggest otherwise. Those who stay committed to the process, despite uncertainty, almost always move further than those who quit. There's a concept in philosophy known as deferred gratification. The idea that the most valuable rewards come not from chasing what feels good in the moment, but from trusting that sacrifice today will yield something greater tomorrow. That is faith in the process. It's the same principle that allows a student to study for years before entering their career, or a farmer to plant seeds and wait through an entire season before harvest. You don't see the fruit immediately, but you trust that the discipline of planting, watering, and tending will eventually bring the result. So when you feel impatient, when you find yourself doubting whether your steps matter, remind yourself of this truth: the process is never wasted. Every rep strengthens you. Every page you write sharpens your craft. Every disciplined choice builds character. Even when you can't see the staircase, the step in front of you is reshaping you into the kind of person who can climb higher. That in itself is progress. If you want to live a meaningful life, you cannot demand that the entire picture be revealed before you begin. You must trust that the act of moving forward, step by step, is itself the path to clarity. Faith in the process doesn't guarantee you'll get exactly what you want, but it guarantees you become the kind of person capable of handling what life gives you. And that is far more valuable. So hold on to this. You don't need to see the whole staircase to climb it. You only need to trust the step beneath your feet and the process that builds one step into another. Have faith in the process, and the staircase will reveal itself in time. If you've ever attempted anything meaningful, you already know this truth: not every step feels the same. Some are light and easy, where momentum carries you forward almost effortlessly. But others are brutally heavy, the kind that make you question whether the climb is even worth it. And this is the part people don't like to talk about. They want the dream, but they don't want the grind. They want the result, but they don't want the resistance. Yet the grind is not an obstacle to success. It is the very mechanism that produces it. Resilience is what separates those who keep climbing from those who quit halfway up the staircase. Because let's be honest, the grind will wear you down. It will test your patience, your energy, even your identity. It's the endless repetition of effort with no immediate payoff. The mornings when you wake up exhausted, and the nights when you wonder if anyone even notices what you're doing. But here's the paradox: those very moments, the ones that feel the most draining, are the ones that forge resilience. They build something inside you that ease and comfort could never produce. Think of it like lifting weights. If you only ever lift what feels light, you don't grow stronger. Your body has no reason to adapt. But when you push against resistance, when the muscles tremble under the weight, that's when growth occurs. The grind works the same way. The hard steps, the ones that seem unbearable, are not signs you're failing. They're the proof you're growing. They're the stress that strengthens the system. There's a psychological depth to this as well. Human beings need challenge to become fully alive. When life is too easy, too predictable, we become stagnant, restless, and even depressed. It's in the struggle that meaning emerges. It's in the grind that you discover what you're capable of enduring. People think happiness comes from ease, but lasting fulfillment comes from the knowledge that you can survive difficulty, that you can stand up to chaos without breaking. That knowledge is only gained through resilience. And resilience isn't about ignoring the pain or pretending it doesn't exist. It's about enduring it without letting it break your commitment. It's about acknowledging, yes, this is hard, yes, this is painful, but I'm not quitting. That decision, repeated over time, becomes strength of character. And strength of character is far more valuable than any comfort you could trade it for. The grind, in many ways, strips away illusions. When things are easy, everyone believes in their dream. But when difficulty arrives, and it always arrives, only those who are resilient continue. That's when you discover whether you're chasing a fantasy or living a purpose. Because purpose can withstand the grind, fantasy cannot. We also need to recognize that resilience is not just about surviving the grind. It's about being reshaped by it. The staircase isn't only about reaching a destination, it's about who you become in the process of climbing. Each hard step builds qualities that last long after the goal is achieved: patience, endurance, toughness, humility. And without those qualities, even if you somehow manage to reach the top, you wouldn't have the strength to remain there. Success gained without resilience is fragile. It crumbles under the first storm. This is why the grind is not something to avoid, but something to embrace. It's not pleasant, but it is necessary. It teaches you that comfort is temporary, but character is permanent. And the truth is, every great achievement you admire, in business, in sports, in art, in science, was built on resilience in the grind. Nobody became extraordinary by quitting when it got uncomfortable. So the next time you hit a step that feels impossible, don't misinterpret it as a sign you're failing. See it for what it is: training. This is the grind shaping you, testing you, refining you. And if you endure it, if you stay committed through the difficulty, you'll emerge stronger than you ever thought possible. Remember, this resilience is not built in the moments of ease, it's built in the grind. The steps that feel the heaviest are the ones that will carry you the highest if you refuse to quit. One of the most overlooked truths about success is that it doesn't usually collapse under the weight of failure. It collapses under the weight of divided attention. People set out to climb the staircase, and instead of fixing their eyes on the step in front of them, they scatter their energy across a dozen different directions. They want to climb, but at the same time, they're checking their phone, worrying about what others think, daydreaming about the top instead of moving their feet. And what happens when your focus is fragmented? Progress slows to a crawl, or worse, it stops altogether. Focus is what creates breakthroughs. It is the narrowing of your vision until only the step in front of you remains. It's a deliberate decision to shut out noise, to silence distraction, to say, this is what matters right now, and I will give it everything I have. Without that focus, even the most talented, intelligent, or ambitious person will find themselves stuck with it. Even ordinary people can achieve extraordinary outcomes. Think about how a magnifying glass works. Sunlight scattered across the ground feels warm, maybe comforting, but harmless. Yet if you concentrate that same light through a lens, it becomes powerful enough to ignite fire. The energy was always there, but focus transformed it into something capable of breakthrough. Human potential works the same way. Your energy, your intelligence, your time, all of it is like sunlight. Spread too thin, it warms but never ignites. Concentrated, it becomes unstoppable. Psychologically, focus is also deeply tied to meaning. When your attention is fractured, life feels chaotic and overwhelming. Your brain is constantly pulled in competing directions, and as a result, you live in a state of distraction and dissatisfaction. But when you discipline yourself to focus, you begin to see patterns emerge. You begin to feel a sense of control. You start to recognize progress in areas where before there was only stagnation. Focus brings coherence to your life, and coherence is what gives you strength. There's a deeper philosophical layer here as well. Life itself is too complex to handle all at once. You cannot solve every problem, conquer every fear, or achieve every goal simultaneously. The staircase is too tall. But when you narrow your vision to the step in front of you, the impossible becomes possible. That's not a trick. It's the only way human beings can actually move forward. You are limited. But in that limitation lies the strategy focus. The people we most admire, leaders, innovators, creators, are not those who tried to do everything. They are those who learned to focus so intensely on one pursuit that it reshaped the world around them. And here's the important part. You don't need to be extraordinary to do this. Focus itself makes you extraordinary, because while most people are wasting their lives in distraction, scattered in 100 directions, you will be channeling your energy into one clear path. And that difference is enough to produce results that look, from the outside, like breakthrough. Of course, focus doesn't come easily. It requires sacrifice. To say yes to the step in front of you. You must say no to countless other things that compete for your attention. That's why most people avoid it. They want to keep every option open, indulge every impulse, answer every notification. But in trying to do everything, they accomplish nothing. Focus is the discipline of limitation. It is choosing deliberately what matters most and then committing to it without apology. And when you do that, when you learn to focus deeply, you begin to experience breakthroughs that seemed impossible before. Problems that once felt overwhelming start to dissolve because your energy is no longer scattered. Progress accelerates because you're no longer starting and stopping, but moving steadily in one direction. And perhaps most importantly, you begin to feel a sense of momentum. The staircase no longer intimidates you because each step becomes clear and achievable. So understand this: focus is not optional if you want to climb. It is the very thing that turns potential into progress and progress into breakthrough. Without it, you'll spend your life staring at the staircase, paralyzed by its scale. With it, you'll discover that every step taken with clarity and intensity moves you closer to the life you were meant to live. Remember this: breakthroughs don't come from doing everything. They come from doing the one thing in front of you with absolute focus. Concentrate your energy, and the staircase will no longer look impossible. It will simply look like the next step. At the end of the day, life is not conquered by staring at the whole staircase. It is conquered by taking one deliberate step at a time. Clarity in the present moment keeps you from being paralyzed by fear. Small wins build the momentum that turns into great victories. Discipline shields you from the distractions that will steal your future. Faith in the process gives you the courage to move forward even when you can't see the full picture. Resilience in the grind transforms struggle into strength, and focus sharpens your energy into breakthroughs. Put these together, and you realize success is not a mystery. It is a decision repeated daily to take the step in front of you with courage and commitment. So don't wait for the staircase to reveal itself. Don't wait for perfect conditions or absolute certainty. Move now. Take the step in front of you and trust that the staircase will rise beneath your feet.